people are very
Wow.
nice people, but the intermediaries, I mean, you may have an executive assistant, and
Yeah,
the
yes.
identity of that executive assistant is to wield power through the. So it does
Yes.
happen a lot.
There are these small unwritten laws which probably the individual has kind of created because it's their way of working, it's their style of working, and that kind of definitely influences cultures.
Welcome to Culture Cafe, a vibrant and inspiring podcast series brought to you by the Confederation of Indian Industry and Avtar, celebrating 25 years of shaping inclusive workplaces. In this milestone year, we bring you transformative conversations with leaders who are redefining workplace cultures. From boardroom wins to human movements that changed everything. These conversations are your backstage pass to how organizations thrive one connection at a time. In this episode, we feature Amitabh Lal Das, Chief Legal Officer of Hyundai Motor India Limited. Amitabh brings 3 decades of legal experience spanning litigation, law firms, and roles as general counsel in both US and Indian companies across various sectors.
A very warm welcome to all of you to this episode of Culture Cafe, where everything culture is talked about and we get some amazing leaders who speak right from the heart about what culture really means to them. Today, in this podcast, I am absolutely delighted and thrilled to welcome an old friend, Amitabh Lal Das, Chief Legal Officer at Hyundai Motor India Limited. Amitabh and Avtar and I go back quite a long way, perhaps a decade and more. And it has been such a pleasure working with Amitabh on all things culture, on all things inclusion, and of course, a little bit legal. So here's welcoming Amitabh to the show. Amitabh, wonderful to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajesh. It's just amazing for me to be here and for you to say such kind things. I have learned so much from you, and I look forward, even in today's interaction, to pick up something and, enrich myself.
How humble of you to say that. We are actually here to learn from you through your rich experience, across multiple corporates in really looking at what culture has meant to you, what you have made of it. But before we get into all things culture, I mean, how has your professional life been? And how does somebody whose title says Chief Legal Officer be so passionate about everything culture? I mean, you have in at least one other organization where we have worked with you. I know the kind of passion that you bring to the people function, to really looking at culture and building it for the organization ground up. I mean, how do you explain this fascination and passion for culture, Amitabh?
I think, law is a bit misunderstood, right? It is not just about thick books and, incomprehensible language. It is about people. I mean, just think of it. Lawyers deal with people, their problems, and, the problems that are rooted in society and get, embedded here and there through people. And all the time, you are actually representing one person against the other, maybe. So it is all about people. And I think that at a workplace or in any informal organization, the things that revolve around people constitute, in my mind, the culture, because it is, there is that symbiotic relationship between what exists without the people and what brings the people to that place, and that, in my view, is culture. So, there are two things my professional journey has been, something totally unplanned. Although I didn't know about it then, but today in retrospect, when I heard Bruce Lee's daughter say that her dad used to say, be like water, which is, flow through any situation. I guess I've just done that, flown like water, and have reached here wherever I have reached, from a small town in Jharkhand today to, different parts of India in the bigger cities. So nothing planned. It has just happened. in all of this, I realized that the only thing that was in my control was to strive for excellence, and that excellence comes with passion. So the experience that you spoke about in my one of the companies where we worked together also was something that I did without knowing anything, but because I needed to do it with excellence, there had to be passion, and I felt for it, and so that is how I have approached things, Dr. Saundarya. Otherwise, I remember doing an interview for a job in a company, which was the first company I worked for. Before that, I used to work in the courts and law firms and all of that. In those days, we used to have stenographers who would take dictation. So I wasn't very well versed with typing out, and it was an American MNC. So my future boss asked me that how well versed are you with typing and computers and all of that. And I didn't know much, but I said I will deal with it with passion and will learn and excel in it. And I said, yeah, I can do a great job. So it wasn't misrepresentation, but it was a projection of my confidence, and then that is what require to reach to that point of confidence. I think it can't be done without the passion for doing it well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And beautifully said. And you know what? Today, this is going to be definitely an aha moment for our viewers. When you spoke about the legal profession actually being one that's fundamentally people. And when you look at a lawyer, you kind of always assume that this person is all about the rules of the law and the word of the law. Whereas, when you put it that way, it's about the ethos of the human being. Who's protected by the law or who's actually represented by, that law. This was quite a brilliant moment of insight for all of us, Amitabh. I mean, you know it kind of here, but for you to feel it and to say that, hey, a lawyer is actually the most people's person that you would actually find, that is something really interesting. Amitabh, you've been in leadership roles, and you have actually been someone who has shaped the futures of many of the organizations that you've been a part of. And here's a conundrum for you. Here's a question that's probably like in the highway, the where you take either the left or the right. Now let's assume that the leadership team had to make a tough choice between what was culturally right for the employees, what was the right culture for the employees, but what was legally safer for the organization. So what would you pick? Would you pick something that was legally safe but not culturally right? Or would you pick what was culturally right but maybe kind of, on the border of legal safety?
So in my experience, I haven't come across situations where, law and legal requirements are, opposed to public interest or people's interest. It generally doesn't happen. Maybe the interpretation is such that, one section of people might get adversely impacted, but it will largely be for the benefit and good of a larger number of people. So I can't, imagine, or I can't recall a situation where there was a trade-off between, propagating a good culture that seemed to be contrary to law. I could think of the reverse situation, where, the culture may not have been strong enough or may not have been deeply rooted in appreciation of the people's problems, and it was also not legally safe. So, for example, one could, a very common example that you will hear from people is the creche thing, right? It is culturally right for an organization to provide for its women employees to have the ability to, see their children and tend to them. And at the same time, it is a legal requirement as well. I would say it has gone back a couple of years ago when these requirements were put in, institutionalized. But even today, a lot of women that we know, including people in my family, extended families, friends, wives, etc., who are missing out on the right element of a culture or of an organizational culture where the legal requirements are met with. Which means, in other words, that while creche is a legal requirement, in a lot of places, the companies or the organizations are trying to just do something so that they can say they've complied with it, but they have not legally complied with it. At the same time, it speaks poorly of the culture as well. I think it is the cost element that comes in, that for every office or whatever is required, if we have a crash, whether we have men or women whether we have those many women employees or not, and whether they are, the children, they have born children and all of that comes into, organizational consideration. And oftentimes, there is a lip service to complying with the law. At the same time, that lip service stems from a sort of delta in the culture that you and I would appreciate, is how I think I want to put it, knowing you and knowing myself.
No. That's very, very nicely put. And whenever you think of the chief legal officer, or you think of somebody who heads the legal department within a company, your thought is the person who puts the guardrail. It's the person who's protecting the interest of the corporate. That's the thought that first comes to the mind. Here's the person that's going to ensure compliance, ensure safety, ensure legal credibility. That is the thought that comes, into the mind. But when you were speaking about it, you kind of linked how what is right by law is actually right for the people. And so I want to ask you, have there been times when the word of law, wherever, whether it's corporate law or civil law, has actually created that culture of safety? Because you often think that, the enforcement of law is more about preventing something bad from happening. But can we flip it and say that actual compliance and actual enforcement will cause good things to happen? Have you ever thought of it that way, or have you, experienced something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, I have. And, I'm sure a lot of other people have. Particularly, let's say, Bangalore has been an example of a rather advanced, workplace, IT sector, a lot of women going to work, late nights, safe place and all of that. And then that HP incident happened where, there was this cap situation, if you will recall.
Yes.
And then suddenly, Bangalore, in my view, which used to be an inspiration for, other cities to emulate it from the point of view of safety of the workplace, actually had a badgered reputation, which meant that people in other cities which were not as safe as Bangalore started to feel very diffident about sending their daughters to, IT sector offices where late night shift, etc. do happen, right? And then the government came up with the law of how, every organization needs to be responsible for providing transport services, rationalized it and made it safe and secure, that if there are five employees to be dropped, the woman employee will be dropped first, and then, so at least one male employee will be the person who will go drop, in addition to maybe a guard or something like that. So that did, create that kind of positive belief in people that there is, that good things will happen because of the law. Now, one bad incident highlighted the risks that exist out there, but how many times or what proportion of risks get precipitated in itself is a debatable thing. But once it gets precipitated, the confidence level of people may go down, and that's where the example I gave actually uplifted the spirits of people, the confidence of people, and even some other place, maybe not Bangalore, but let's say Ranchi in Jharkhand, if there is an ITBPO there, because of that new law that has been made and is going to be enforced strictly, parents are more comfortable sending their daughters. So I think, that's one example I can think of. And I'm sure, if I didn't have the time limit on the questions and we were in a much more, on a coffee, conversation, I would have shared more. But this is something that comes to my mind. Absolutely.
No, that's, I as you were speaking, I was actually thinking of how much of a value, trusting the legal framework to do its job actually brings to the table. To build that trust to actually be able to say that, we are following all of these compliances because it makes sense, because it protects the people. That faith and trust, which I feel, and this is just my personal opinion, Amitabh, I feel that the legal profession probably has to do a little bit more by way of
Yes.
its own PR for
Right.
that level of value to actually come. Um, let's move to the next one. You were speaking of Bangalore and the IT industry and so on. Today, artificial intelligence has really caused a lot of havoc, not just in the in the work and careers of people, because you know that AI is capable of replacing humans, at least at the low skill levels, at least for certain jobs, and so on. I'm sure the legal profession is also under threat in a manner of speaking. But from technology standpoint, where AI is supposed to be this big helper, this big enabler in many ways, do you think the legal aspects, the gray aspects of what artificial intelligence can do, for instance, deep fake videos or, editing and so on, what is your thought about this? How does this affect culture? How does this affect the trust that people have, in the organization or in what's going on around them?
Yeah, I think it's too big a problem for me to actually, compend it and answer this question. So on AI generally, I think there are aspects of it that are worrisome that you just spoke about, which is, deep fake, then there is these digital arrests and all kinds of things happening. And then those are disturbing. I or you probably don't have control over what could be projected of us, even though what is being projected of us is not us being projected, it is something else, because you can, again, deep fake, right? So it definitely is a lot of privacy and those kind of issues that are coming up, safety, security issues. At the same time, I'm sure that there are, lots and lots of benefits that also are on the horizon. We think first of how things will be abused versus how things can actually be beneficially used. And then I think that's a normal human way of thinking. You always think of problems first, solutions later.
It's our favorite negativity bias. If you remember the bias sessions.
Yeah, but actually, as and then I will use communism example as those Marx and Hegel said that out of conflict, out of this thesis, antithesis, synthesis comes out. So I'm hoping something will come out like that. And then one thing I'm very conscious of is to see what it actually means, because we hear AI, but I just enrolled myself for a course to understand what all of this means. So I'll be in a better position to comment on it other than just normal general common sense comments once I've gone through, understood. And there are some examples, experiences that other people have had that I know of. But talking of culture and the workplace, since you asked that question, what I saw with some of my friends and colleagues in the US, they are starting to get impacted at the workplace because of AI, because now you see there are so many job cuts that are happening, particularly in the technology companies.
Yes.
Then so that's one aspect of the debate that's going on, at least in America, where Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Meta, these kind of companies are letting go people. And from what I understand, that it is because of what AI is going to take away from people's jobs. The other debate that is going on, which hasn't been that broad-based in discussions, but I am, connected with HR and legal folks there as well. So one line of discussion that was happening was whether in all of this, the legal department or the organizational structure should be revamped to be such that the legal department actually includes within its own remit the HR department. And so it was a very interesting conversation between the HR folks and the chief legal officer kind of folks who are talking on the pros and cons of it. And of course, the HR folks were very displeased, and I was quite surprised about the line of thinking. So there are so many elements of discussions going on that may impact organizational culture, emanating from the more specific, nuanced situations that will come out of AI, which I am not aware of. But I think it's right now for me a blind spot, and I'm trying to get around it. And I don't know how many people are so goddamn sure that they can talk about it. One thing I know, that in the legal profession, it is definitely going to be a very helpful tool to expedite research, to maybe even be more accurate in research. But at the same time, one hears contrapoints. Like, for example, this experiment was done in Chicago, that AI was used for passing traffic, the equivalent of traffic challans in India. So basically, historically, because more blacks had been fined for traffic violations, and this is machine learning, and artificial intelligence, from the little I understand, tries to predict the next thing. So there was a bias. You spoke of bias. So because of the way things have been, and the artificial intelligence is developed on the basis of what exists data, that bias also creeps in. So how to deal with that bias is something one will have to deal with. So I think that law in Chicago was discontinued because it was a biased law, because the history and the data, historical data, was actually biased against the Black Americans. And similarly, that could be so many other situations. And my children keep asking me about how safe my job is, and I tell them that till the time in a court there is a human judge, I think the lawyers are still safe.
No, absolutely. The way in which artificial intelligence is really sweeping every discussion, every conversation, and we start off with it and we go back to sleep with it. I think you're absolutely right. There's going to be a sort of a sifting of views. I think when the dust settles and we all are able to see what AI can actually deliver and what it has probably achieved, I think that will be the moment when we would be able to say for sure whether artificial intelligence is, a boon or a bane from that perspective. Amitabh, very often in a culture where the leader is really powerful, and you look at the leader's personal value systems, the leader's image, the leader's role modeling, permeating down the system, down the hierarchy, there are many things that the leader can achieve. Now, I just want you to visualize a time, maybe it's hypothetical, maybe it's not something that really happened in your career or in your observation. How would it be if the leader were able to kind of, bend some of the policies or some of the practices that the organization has followed for a long time? And would that actually change the culture finally? Would that be something that, the organization then looks at and says that ultimately it's about an authoritarian figure like the leader who's able to do this, and it's for the good of the company, good of the individual or not, that remains to be decided. So what kind of an influence do you think such a leader, a very powerful leader, plays on the culture and on the ability to make changes to the system, Amitabh?
I think it can be huge, but it has, it is a double-edged sword. It's like, as you were talking, if the leader were a benevolent dictator, then it could be a very positive thing, for some time. But if the leader was not a benevolent dictator, but was a dictator in the pejorative sense, then then the culture could be totally vitiated. And I have seen both sides, by the way. So it does happen, that there are leaders who are very positively orientated and who will bend certain things for the larger good of the people and for the organization. And because, the environment in which businesses and organizations work are dynamic. So, if you were to be very bureaucratic, then you could lose time. At the same time, I have also seen that contrary to one trait of leadership that I think is essential, which is that leaders eat last. There are leaders who want to eat first, and then, they would also bend the rules for their own benefit. And then it is not something that only, it's not a phenomenon that only I am privy to, right? I mean, as a lawyer now, I speak, or as a corporate governance student or expert or professional, I say that conflict of interest is ingrained in any, academic study of power and exercise of power, right? So it is all about whether, the persona that you asked me to imagine, whether that persona has fed the good wolf or the bad wolf, right? So, as you say, as a human being, if you feel we have both the good wolf and the bad wolf within us, and that wolf thrives that you feed more. So if you feed the negative wolf, you're a negative person, and but if you feed the positive wolf, it is as I said, it's a double-edged sword. But yeah, people and leaders with the right kind of orientation, attitude, and integrity, they can actually change things where culture and cultural elements have been suppressed or have been subordinated by very, I shall say, primitive policies. I was looking for the right word, but I wasn't, on national television. I didn't want to use words loosely. So, not national television, but within brackets on your national podcast. Yeah. So that's the answer. That's what I, feel that both
Beautifully
ways.
said. Yeah. Very, very nicely said. And I think, you clearly sort of nailed it when you said that, yes, leaders do have sweeping powers and influence, but what do you use that for? And, what is the final legacy or the final imprint that you're going to create using that power? So that was brilliantly articulated. Thank you so much, Amitabh, for that. You have recently joined Hyundai and you have taken up this responsibility and this role. Any interesting cultural moorings or cultural, aspects, say some kind of unofficial rules and stuff like that at Hyundai that, have caught your attention? Something that you find very interesting and different?
So, as I said at the outset, I will not go company specific, and we'll definitely keep Hyundai out of this thing. It's a great company.
Okay.
I'm really delighted to be here at a time when, it is on a different cusp of growth, and he's integrating into India as a, as a totally Indian company. Because I'm not a spokesperson and I shouldn't be talking about those things. But yeah, I can, I generally speaking, I have been curious, or how should I put it, at times even felt like set back when I've seen certain things in the unofficial culture of an organization, where one that comes to my mind is in one organization. Again, I've been very lucky that all the organizations I have worked for, from the smaller ones to the bigger ones, I have joined at the leadership level. So in my experience, the confidence shattering or the not so great thing that I discovered in a company where the unofficial rule was, when I was propagating an open door policy, anybody on the team most welcome to come anytime to have coffee, any brainstorming, anything. So that's the policy that I have. And I realized that nobody's coming to me. Nobody's coming to talk to me. So, and I would do these interactions with people, and one-on-one, then within small groups, and then larger group, and then the largest group. And I would tell people that, what is it? Am I kind of intimidating? So intimidating that nobody comes to me? Am I, that uninteresting? Nobody's coming to me. Then I realized, that the unofficial rule was that nobody can come to me unless their immediate manager, supervisor had approved their, coming to me. They had to present the need, the justification. And I thought that unofficial rule wasn't very heartwarming. And I was worried that then, I had MD as a boss, that for me to do that also, is it like a glass ceiling or something like that? So one of those roles. Then in many companies, I see that the unofficial rule of hierarchy is something puts me off. Yeah.
Yeah, those are all some great unofficial rules. And,
Yeah.
even when we work with organizations, corporates who come to us for consulting support with regard to culture building or inclusive culture creation and so on, we often find that these unwritten rules have a lot more power than the written rule itself. Where you would be very clear that this is the process the company follows. This is what's written. This is what's actually mentioned, whether in the document or whether on their portal and so on. But there are these small unwritten laws which probably the individual has kind of created because it's their way of working. It's their style of working. And that kind of definitely influences culture. So
And I
thank
would
you
like
so
to
much for
add,
sharing that. Yeah.
and just want to add there, that's not just people, but sometimes the intermediaries. The people are very
Ah.
nice people, but the intermediaries, I mean, you may have an executive assistant, and
Yeah.
the identity of that executive assistant is, to wield power through so it
Yes.
does happen a lot. So I have seen again both, where the instruction from the top is like that, and also situations and examples where the person at the top was the most genuine and likable person, but the intermediaries were the in a way, let's say, would assume the villainous roles.
Absolutely. The gatekeepers. The
Yeah.
folks who actually are able to control access to the power, to the powers that be. So
Yes.
I know I completely agree with you on that, Amitabh. Yes. Well, we are almost at the end of this conversation. I think it just flew by. One can't even think that we got through so many facets and aspects of culture. My last question to you. I mean, being the the holder or the in many ways the person who is responsible for the reputation of the organization, for the safety, for the reputation, for ensuring that the company's image is protected, its standing is protected. Have you ever witnessed, again, this could be hypothetical, no names need to be named. Have you witnessed any company avoid a reputational crisis because of their strong culture, strong values? Has that ever happened? Have you ever been privy to such an instance, Amitabh?
Small little instances where reputation was not at risk, but I would hear talk of. I think I read somewhere about the Infosys situation where they had kind of. I think it was relating to the financial forecasts they had made or guidance that they had given, and they were falling short. And I think that they decided to be transparent. They decided to be honest. They decided to be truthful. I mean, humans make mistakes, organizations can make mistakes, and people who can own up have the strength and character of conviction of character that resonates with people. I definitely resonate with that, because I think everybody is fallible, and to own up to being fallible and making mistakes is actually adding to your character. And I think that in that situation, as far as I can recall, it actually augmented the reputation of the organization that I just mentioned, and I hope that the example is correct. The names are correct, but that is one thing that I have always, and I think I'm right. My recollection is correct, because I was doing a course, a 1-year course from XLRI in finance, and in one of the lectures, it is, our professor from XLRI, Jamshedpur, mentioned this, and it stuck in my mind, because oftentimes I have seen leaders and I have seen organizations who won't want to do that, who would wait for it to, they would hope that nothing would come out of it and that it would die its own death, and therefore let's keep quiet and let's speak only when it comes up, versus this example where, the organization came up and owed up to, misassessment, maybe, And then in other organizations, I've seen one thing. When I joined my first job, it was a small American company, and I remember the founders, the two founders were visiting India, and I was also part. They were doing a town hall, and in that, one of the co-founders talked about, he was also the head of people. What is it called? Chief People Officer.
Okay.
It used to be a different name. It was a very nice designation. So he made a confession there, and then he said, and it was about comp. He said, till now, our approach was, what is it that we can get away with? Versus today, after a lot of thinking, I have come to the conclusion that compensation is what you guys deserve and need to be paid. And then that was, to me, it wasn't an external matter concerning reputation, but if you look at it from my point of view, the reputation of that organization and that gentleman and that management team suddenly just shot up. And I have struggled to find that kind of candor, that kind of, just owning up and saying, look, the approach that we followed was not right. Apologies, we are correcting it, and this is the new approach we will follow. So I think that those are things that really, that it is embedded in my mind, is a testimony to the fact that it was so powerful. This was about maybe 25 years ago, 25 years ago.
Yeah. When you were recounting that, it was such a beautiful moment where genuineness, speaking from the heart, accepting fallibility, and doing it not because somebody found you out or somebody, discovered the problem, but because you can't sleep at night. If you were not transparent enough, if you were not, real enough in admitting what's happened, I think that really is the cornerstone of great culture, Amitabh. And I'm sure that leader, because, definitely he or she has left such a strong impression in you 25 years later, that you're able to think of that moment when that, honesty actually kind of shone forth. So this was such a great conversation, Amitabh. Thank you so much. Any closing remarks that you'd like to share with our viewers?
I mean, the only thing I would like to say, Dr. Saundarya, is that I wish this was longer and that we can do it again. It was just so amazing.
No,
Thank you, sir.
absolutely. We would love to have you back again here. If not in Culture Cafe, but in definitely one, any of the other podcasts that we do. And
Sure.
as always, Amitabh, your, honesty and the absolute frankness with which you speak, which I have always, enjoyed while interacting with you. I think we witnessed it in full measure for the audience today here. Here's wishing you a fabulous career and a fantastic life ahead, both in the new home and in the new job. And here's hoping, viewers, you all had a great time listening to this fantastic conversation. All things legal, but all things people as well. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Amitabh.